let's talk about election interference that is currently happening. Now, if you've been living underneath a rock, the DOJ just indicted Donald Trump. And according to the legal document, Trump is being charged with 38 felony counts. So let's take a look at those charges. All right, here is the document. Scroll up here so that way you kind of see what else there is here. But anyways, we're here for the counts. So counts 1 through 31, willful retention of national defense information. Count 32, conspiracy to obstruct justice. Count 33, withholding a document or record. Count 34, corruptly concealing a document or record. Count 35, concealing a document in a federal investigation. Count 36, scheme to conceal. Count 37, false statement and representation. And then it goes to the other counts here. We're here for count 38. Count 38, false statement and representation. Now, I'm going to make this quick as to how these charges don't hold water. All right. And maybe I'm going to be wrong here because I'm just some asshole on the internet. But obstruction of justice appears multiple times in this indictment. And those charges are the thing that everyone brings up when talking about this because the FBI has audio recordings of Trump and his lawyer talking about hiding and lying to investigators. So here's an article from the New York Times that they took down because it probably jeopardizes the case for the DOJ, but they kind of explain how the evidence came to be. Trump indictment shows critical evidence came from one of his own lawyers. Scroll down here. The two indictments filed so far against former President Donald J. Trump, one brought by the Manhattan District Attorney, the other by a Justice Department special counsel, charged him with very different crimes but have something in common. Both were based, at least in part, on the words of his own lawyers. In the 49-page federal indictment accusing him of retaining classified documents after leaving the White House and scheming to block government efforts to retrieve them, some of the most potently damning evidence come from the notes made by one of the lawyers, Mr. Evan Corcoran. That's how you say his name. Mr. Corcoran's notes, first recorded into an iPhone and then transcribed on paper, essentially gave prosecutors a roadmap to building their case. Mr. Trump, according to the indictment, pressured Mr. Corcoran to thwart investigators from reclaiming reams of classified material and even suggested to him that it might be better to lie to investigators and withhold the documents altogether. Now, there are two things wrong there. All right. With this bombshell evidence. The first thing is that the audio recording they have of Trump talking to his lawyers has been manipulated because they used an iPhone to record another audio recording that then has been downloaded onto a computer, and the computer is not the biggest part here. Recording an audio recording with an iPhone compresses the audio wave. So at that point, there's no way to tell if it was AI generated, which is a thing now, or if it was selectively edited. And then the second thing is the process of transferring it from the iPhone to a computer also further degrades the audio, but that's not the big point. The chances of the audio being allowed to be used in courts are slim. Now, and even if the judge allows this audio to be used as evidence, it will then be thrown out because the recording as evidence violates attorney-client privilege. And here's Alex Wagner from MSNBC saying that the DOJ violated attorney-client privilege.
That effectively the DOJ pierced attorney-client privilege, and boy, what did they get when they pierced it? Evan Corcoran keeping audio recordings of his diary through the sort of onset of the saga with the retained documents. There's Alex Cannon, another lawyer who refused to put out a statement that said the DOJ or that NARA and the federal government had gotten everything back from Donald Trump. I mean, the lawyers are key players in this, not just because they're advising their client in a legally treacherous terrain, but because they're now witnesses and potentially criminally exposed in this.
Pierced attorney-client privilege. That's right there in the wording, huh? The DOJ is breaking the law to charge Trump with breaking the law. Now, what if, this is a big what if, I guess, what if those conversations were all hypothetical conversations? Now, I think you should be allowed to have a private, hypothetical conversation with your lawyer, right? Or am I just crazy for thinking that way? I don't know. No, the DOJ is well aware that this will not hold up in court, but they don't care because their goal is not to win a case in court, but to influence public opinion. Now, the second big thing that they say the DOJ has on Trump is withholding documents and violating the Presidential Records Act. Now, that doesn't hold up either. The reason being is because the Presidential Records Act says that. All right, so here's the Presidential Record Act. And the two lines we're focusing on here is establish a process by which the president may restrict and the public may obtain access to the records after the president leaves office. Specifically, the PRA allows for public access to presidential records through Freedom of Information Act, FOIA, beginning 5 years after the end of the administration, but allows the president to invoke as many as 6 specific restrictions to public access for up to 12 years. Codifies the process by which a former incumbent president conduct reviews for executive privilege prior to public release of records by NARA, which had formerly been governed by Executive Order 13489. Now, if you don't know what the fuck that means, neither do I, but that's okay, because a judge has already ruled in a previous case what those two paragraphs mean. Judge Amy Barron Jackson decided in favor of President Clinton, noting that whatever documentation a president chooses to take is his property to keep. And here's an article showing that statement. Trump's boxes in Clinton's sock drawer. Although the indictment against Donald Trump doesn't cite the Presidential Records Act, the charges are predicated in the law. The indictment came about only because the government thought Mr. Trump took records that didn't belong to him and that the government raided his house to find any such records. This should never have happened. The Presidential Records Act allows the president to decide what records to return and what records to keep at the end of his presidency. And the National Archives and Records Administration can't do anything about it. I know because I'm the lawyer who lost the Clinton sock drawer case. In 2009, historian Taylor Branch published the Clinton tapes, Wrestling History with the Presidents. The book is based on recordings of Mr. Branch's 79 meetings with Bill Clinton between January 20th, 1993 and January 20th, 2001. According to Mr. Branch, the audio tapes preserve not only Mr. Clinton's thoughts on issues he faced while president, but also some actual events such as phone conversations among them. And he goes and he gives some of the things that would be on these tapes, which would be considered national defense stuff and top secret shit. Just saying. Now, let's get to the quote part in this article. So here, let me bring that up. Judge Amy Barron Jackson agreed, since the president is completely entrusted with the management and even the disposal of presidential records during his time in office, she held it would be difficult for this court to conclude that Congress intended that he would have less authority to do what he pleases with what he considers to be his personal records. Judge Jackson added that the PRA contains no provision obligating or even permitting the archivist to assume control over records that the president categorized and filed separately as personal records. At the conclusion of the president's term, the archivist only assumes responsibility for the presidential records. PRA does not confer any mandatory or even discretionary authority on the archivist to classified records. Under the statute, this responsibility is left solely to the president. Now, if you're like me and don't like it when people use opinion pieces, here's a non-opinion piece from Politico. Politico. Judge won't seize Bill Clinton Taylor Branch audio tapes. A federal judge has dismissed a Conversation legal group's lawsuit seeking to force the National Archives to demand audio tapes author Tyler Branch made of President Bill Clinton during his years in office. Acting Thursday on the suit from Judicial Watch, U.S. District Court Judge Amy Jackson said there was no obvious legal mechanism that the archivist could use to force Clinton to turn over the recordings. She also said it wouldn't be legally proper for her to issue such an order in any event, since the archivist has discretion about when to assert the government's rights under the Presidential Records Act. The court has seriously doubts about whether the former president's retention of the audio tapes as personal is a matter that is subject to judicial review. But the court needed to decide this question because whether judicial review is available or not, the relief that plaintiff seeks, the archivist assumes custody and control of the audio tapes, is not available under the PRA, Jackson wrote in her decision. So, easy to say, all these charges don't hold water. And Trump said it best at a rally he held after being indicted, so let's give that a watch.
Under the Presidential Records Act, which is civil, not criminal, I had every right to have these documents. The crucial legal precedent is laid out in the most important case ever on this subject, known as the Clinton Socks case. You know what that means? After leaving the White House, Bill Clinton kept 79 audio tapes in his sock drawer. They included discussions of U.S. military involvement in Haiti, discussions of U.S. foreign policy, both defense and offense, against Cuba, recordings of President Clinton's conversations with all of the many foreign leaders at the time. Think of that. Sensitive facts about trade negotiations taken from presidential briefings, discussions with the Secretary of State about conflict in Bosnia, and much, much more. Very big stuff. Not only was Bill Clinton never even considered for criminal prosecution based on the tapes he took, but when he was sued for them, he won the case. Judge Amy Berman Jackson's decision states, under the statutory scheme established by the Presidential Records Act, the decision to segregate personal materials from presidential records is made by the president during the president's term and in the president's sole discretion. You're surprised to hear that, aren't you? Any normal administration, even an opposing one, would consider that to be the end, but not the corrupt Biden administration.
There we go. Trump said it better. And that's the big point that everybody brings up, is that the Clinton sock drawer case is different than what's going on with the classified documents that Trump took. And it's like, shut the fuck up. They had top secret information on there, national security information. It's like, come on, quit it. It's like, quit it. This is the DOJ's attempt to affect public opinion and participate in election interference. Trump is the front runner, and they all know that. They are afraid of him. That's why they are trying to stop him from achieving the Republican nomination, because he is going to beat whoever they throw at him. They have been trying for the last 6 years to hurt Trump's chances at running or winning the 2024 election. The legislative branch tried to keep Trump from running in 2024 with 2 impeachments. They failed. They then tried to hurt Trump's reputation with the Circus Committee that made zero headway to connect Trump with election interference or insurrection. Their hope was to hurt Trump's popularity among Republican voters. They failed. The judicial branch has now taken up where the legislative branch left off, utilizing the same false accusations, but now using the court of law to hopefully land some Hail Mary loophole to prohibit Trump from running in 2024 or to harm Trump's reputation among his followers, causing him to lose the primary. And unfortunately for them, they're going to fail because out of everything that has happened so far, Trump has gained support. So in March of 2024, Trump was polling at a 50% to win the Republican primary, and here's a tweet of that. So this is from Interactive Polling, 2024 National Republican Primary, March 24th, 2023. Trump is sitting at a 50%, and that's from a Harris-Harvard poll. Now, Trump is currently polling at a 59% to win the Republican primary, and that's from the same accounts, which is Interactive Polls, and they are showing that the Emerson College poll that was done on June 2022 shows that Trump has gone up to 59%, which has a plus 38 on everybody else. The numbers are right there. I don't know. So, nothing's working. Everything they throw at him just it bolsters his support. And I don't think they understand why. And nobody understands. An article came out here in Washington basically saying that here in Washington, in at least the King County, well, here in the state of Washington, but anyways, that Trump has not lost support even though all this shit is going on and they're baffled by it. Because they don't understand why. Because to them, where I live at, like Trump's the boogeyman and all this stuff that's been shown should, kind of hurt him because it would hurt any other person. But what they don't understand is that everything that's happened to Trump since 2016 has made it so that way the base looks at this shit and they go, well, you've been wrong about everything else. What about now? Why should we believe what you're saying? And let's just say it's true. They're still not going to believe it's true because you've been crying wolf since 2016. And now you're fucking wondering why nobody believes anything? That's why. Because the Democrats are the little boy who cried wolf.